Hello, my name is Nick Kendal and I'm the manager of the British Council in Candy.
My name's Ewen and Ava, I'm a teacher here in Candy.
My name's Ava Billings and I'm a teacher here too.
So we're here to talk about Kingsley's book art exhibition. So what were your sort of first impressions?
When I first walked through, I didn't notice much at all. Actually, I just looked at some boxes with some books in and some things around them, and I walked around it and thought, and then carried on with my day. I went on to teaching. Yeah? So my first impression was, it's just some books in boxes. Yeah?
I was quite impressed with the collages. I had noticed them first of all, and I was impressed with them. In particular, the way they were set out. The frame was rather large, and the actual collage was quite small, so it made it quite striking, I thought. And I looked at the other exhibits, and I found them all rather dark and macabre. Anyway, Ewan has written a very good poem, so we can talk about it after he's read the poem.
Okay, I shall read the poem. The poem was written in response. As I said, my first impression was that there wasn't much to it, but when I started looking more closely, the number of different ways in which the books were bound, the particular things, the themes of the books, what was being bound, democracy, freedom, and various other things like that, I found it quite subtle. It went from being, there's not much to it, to actually there's quite a lot of depth in what's being said here. So I wrote a poem in response to it. The poem's called The Flower. A truck full of soldiers went up the hill. Under one wheel, a tiny white flower, I don't know its name, was crushed. And I hope to capture in the poem the same kind of subtlety that's in the way that the books are bound and the way that the concepts that the books refer to, the symbols they refer to, as I said, democracy, freedom and so on, the way that they are bound as well. And I hope to capture the same degree of subtlety. I'm not sure I did, but that was the purpose of the poem.
What do you think about that?
Generally, I mean, I'd agree. I'd say, you know, on first impressions, I mean, you sort of go away and yes, there were the concepts are very nice, and you have a look at the pictures that were on the walls as well, and they were very colourful. And then it's only sort of later when you go around and have a second look that you see that there is, and I understand what Ava said about it, you know, being darker and more macabre than you know, your initial impression is perhaps. That comes through more the more you looked at the exhibits. And it did get you thinking, particularly about you know, obviously things that are important in terms of liberty and democracy, and in terms of freedom of speech, and also interesting from our perspective as the British Council having a library. You know, how that sort of affects things in terms of literature and in terms of expression through writing.
It's the idea of books for me are about openness. Books are about accessibility to different worlds and different ideas and so on. And the idea of actually physically binding those books, it's not just the books that are being bound, it's all the people who want to read them, all the ideas, all the symbols that those books stand for are also bound in some sense. Yeah? That was one aspect. The other aspect I thought was quite interesting in the context of Sri Lanka as well. There's a statement being made about, I think, I'm not sure, but to me, there's a statement being made about the political situation in Sri Lanka. I don't want to go into it in depth though.
I think my first reaction when I saw the exhibits of books was that they were very negative and dark and macabre. And I thought that it kind of shows, I spoke to Ewan about this and he showed me the poem. And I thought, do we really need to be reminded that about man's inhumanity to man, how brutal we are? I mean, I think it was very clever. The concept was very clever, and it came through in the way you showed it with bullet holes and everything. But I don't want to be reminded about this kind of thing. I know it goes on, but I don't want to be reminded about it. So I found the collages more positive and kind of just striking, the way they were presented, the way they were framed, perhaps, if you like. Yeah.
And what do you think about the students' idea? And what
well, I know that I know that some of the children in Ed's class wrote about it, and they were quite negative and said they didn't like it, and it was simply because it was rather dark, and they didn't they were too young to understand what you were actually trying to say, that you were trying to show what freedom is and what freedom isn't, etc. So they were very young, but they just said they didn't like it because I don't know that they looked at the collages. There was no comment. It was just, I think some of the boys were quite excited about the bullet holes and all that. I think they were taken with that. But it's just because they really didn't understand what you were trying to say. They're too young to understand about freedom of speech and that, perhaps.
I would disagree with one thing that you said there, and that is one of the things I think that happens is that people forget very easily what's going on. They get on with their lives and they forget what's going on around
kind of in denial.
And one of the purposes of art for me is to act as a reminder.
Yes.
Not necessarily as a conscience, I think that's too strong a word, but just to remind people that there are other ways of thinking, that there are other things to be thought about other than just getting on with your life.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I think, you know, it's I can understand your perspective, Ava. You know, it's a beautiful world and we have to celebrate that as well.
Yes.
But I mean, it is also a very dangerous world in which we live, and you know, hopefully we learn things from our history. Yes. And I think art does serve as a reminder of, you know, not to repeat the mistakes that we perhaps have made in the past, whatever mistakes those may be. And also a reminder that, you know, that we don't want the same things to happen again, essentially. I think that's a key thing. And I also saw your point about there being different levels, you know, and perhaps, you know, some of the exhibits weren't particularly suitable for children of a certain age. But I think you could see it in different levels, and I think that's one of the things, particularly that Ewen was saying earlier, is you did find different sort of layers there. So you see it just at a superficial level the first time. The more you go back and look and see, there's more that you actually see within the works themselves. And I thought that came across very powerfully.
When you actually did these paintings, was it quite recently, for example? Because it does kind of, you kind of think of Syria and Yemen and Egypt and Tunisia, and they're all fighting for freedom, aren't they? Did you think of those things when you were doing this?
Actually not, it's yes, nothing all around the world.
Okay.
It's just happening. That is the real situation in the world.
Yes, absolutely.
So
Look at Syria
I have
now.
a lot of impression from that also.
Yes.
The ideas. And even mostly in Sri Lanka, the Sri Lankan people should know it's not do again.
Yes.
Because
we should never stop.
Yes.
Now the time. So that's why I want to show that.
I think the other thing, I think the subtlety of the art kind of mirrors for me the fact that it's very easy to slip from being fairly open and a fairly democratic country. It's quite easy to slip down that slope towards totalitarianism and towards a lack of freedom of speech and so on. And I don't think people realise how quickly that can happen, how it can overtake countries. Yeah? And kind of the subtlety, just you walk past boxes with books in them, yeah? And it's not obvious what they're saying, and that subtlety kind of matches what the message is trying to convey, I think. Yeah?
Nick, why did the British Council help Kingsley to put the exhibition, and what is your future?
Well, I think, you know, obviously as the Cultural Relations Organisation for the United Kingdom, part of our remit is really to work on supporting the arts in the different countries that we work in. So that's a key thing. Also, Kingsley's exhibition obviously tied in very closely with our library, where we have books. So it was a nice fit, essentially. So we were, able to link the two together, and obviously Kingsley also helped us by doing an art workshop with our students. So, art and literature are very closely entwined, and I think this exhibition was specifically about books, was a very close link to what we do in terms of encouraging reading. Yeah. So that was the main link in a sense. So it was good from that point of view, I think, just to have him here to exhibit his work. And so it has raised quite a lot of debate, not just amongst teachers, I think, but amongst people who have been to see the exhibition. And that's always a good thing, I think, that discussion of ideas, which perhaps when we're busy, immersed in our lives, we don't do enough of. So it's good to step back sometimes and have a look more closely at sort of issues which are very important, obviously, to humankind, and I think that the exhibit manifested that, demonstrated that very well.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice.